Hi everyone, this is Bilal Khan and you are watching Simplified Coding. So we have successfully completed the login in our application, and now after a successful authentication we are opening a separate activity, that is the home activity of our project. Now in this video I will tell you how you can call other APIs that requires an authentication token. So I have changed the backend API a little bit, and you can get the updated source in the description of this video, and I have already updated my backend API. So I have created this API. The endpoint is user, that previously was hello world, and this time it is returning the information of authenticated user except the access token, and it is a get request. And to access this API we need to pass a correct bearer token that we will get after a successful authentication. So let me show you. If I change something in the bearer token, then what will happen is we will get a 401 response, that is unauthorized. Now whenever the user is not actually authenticated in our application side, we will get a 401 response for any API that requires authentication. So if we are getting a code that is 401, that means the user is logged out and we need to log out the user. So whenever we will get a 401, what we will do in our application side is we will clear the local data and we will log out the user. So that's how it's going to work. Now let's see how we can call the API that requires an authentication token, that is the bearer token. So now in my project, I will open the class remote data source. Inside this class, we already created the function that is building the API instance for us. Now it was building the auth API instance, and actually it is a generic function that can build an instance for any API interface. But for now we used it only for our auth API. But authentication is over now, and after authenticating the user, we will use the same function to build the API that requires an authentication. So to the same function, I will pass one more parameter to add the authentication header, that is the bearer token. So what I will do here is, to the same function, I will add one more parameter, that is auth token of type string, and I will put the default value to null, so that our existing code where we are calling the build API function won't get affected, because we already have a default value to this auth token and it is not necessary to pass this parameter. So we will pass this parameter only when we have a correct auth token. Now we need to add this token to the headers of our request, and to do this we will go to this OK HTTP client.builder, and here we will call the function add interceptor. Now here, to the trailing lambda of this add interceptor function, we will get the chain. Now we will use this chain to add our header to the request. So here we will call the function chain.proceed, and here we will create our new request. So here I will write chain.request.new builder. So we will build a new request here, and here I will write also, and then finally I will call the build to build the request. Now inside also we will add the headers. So here I will write it.add header, and we need to add authorization. So I will write authorization here, and for the value we will pass bearer and then our auth token, like this. And we have successfully added the authorization bearer token to our request. Now whenever we will call this function, that is build API, and we will pass the auth token that we are getting after a successful login, we will create an API that will pass the authorization token to each request, and that's how it will work. Now what we need to do is we need to create one more interface for our users API. So I will create a new Kotlin file class here and I will name it user API. Now inside this API, I will create the GET request. The endpoint is user and it will be a suspending function, and I will name it get user, and the return type this time is the login response because the response structure is same. So I am reusing the same class that we created earlier. So we have the function get user that is returning us the login response, and inside the login response we have our user. Now this time we won't receive the access token. So what we need to do is we need to make this access token nullable. Now it may affect our existing code, but let's leave it for now. Now what we will do is we will go to our user API and here we have the function. Now we need to create one more repository that will call this get user function. So here I will copy the auth repository and I will paste it like this, and I will change the name to user repository. Now to this class we need to pass the users API, and we do not need these functions, so I will remove everything. So let's write here suspend fun get user, and again we will use the safe API call function and we will call the API dot get user, and this function will fetch us the user from the API that requires authentication. This is important to remember. Okay, now we will create a view model as well. So let's create the view model. So I will create one more class and I will name it home view model, and I am creating this class inside this home package. So let's create home view model, and to the home view model we need to pass the user repository. So I will write private val repository of type user repository, and we will extend view model like this. Now inside this view model I will create a response. So let's define live data. So I have val user that is of type live data, of type resource, of type login response, because this is what we are getting from the API call. Now I will create a private val underscore user that is mutable live data of the same type, resource of type login response. And when we will get this user, we will return the mutable live data like this. So we have the live data that will give us the user. Now we need to get the user by calling the function that we just created in our repository. So I will define here fun get user, and we will use the view model scope because we need to call a suspending function, and we will write user dot value equals to repository dot get user, and that's it. We have our view model ready. Now what we will do is we will call this get user function inside our home fragment. But now we also need to change our home fragment, and this time we will extend not this fragment class but the base fragment that we already created. So let's do it. I will write here base fragment. The first thing that we need to pass is the view model. So we have home view model. Then we need to pass the binding. So we will pass fragment home binding, and then finally the repository. So we will pass user repository this time. Now everything is okay. Let's optimize the imports, and we need to implement some members. So we will implement every members. Now for the view model, I will simply write home view model class.java. For the binding, we can write equals to, we have fragment home binding dot inflate, and here we will pass the inflator, the container, and then false. That's it. For this function, that is get fragment repository, we need to pass our user repository. So here we will create an instance of our user repository. And as you can see here, to create a user repository, we need the instance of user API. And this time, user API will require authentication token as well, that we already stored in our data store. So what we need to do is we need to create our API instance first, because to create the user repository, we need the user API. So let's do it. So what we will do is we will create a val API, and again we will use the remote data source instance that we already have, and we will call the function build API, and here we will pass user API class.java, and we also need to pass auth token. Now we can get the auth token from our data store that we already have inside user preferences, but the problem here is it is asynchronous, and when we call the user preferences dot auth token, we will get a flow. When I decided about this course, I thought I will use shared preferences to store the token that works synchronously. But then I got to know about this new library, that is data store, and I decided to use data store for this project. Now here is the problem. We have flow, and I want to do the things synchronously for the auth token. And what I can do here is I can create a token instance, and I can call auth token dot first. Now it will give me the auth token, but it is a suspending function, and I cannot call it directly, and I cannot call it in a coroutine scope either, because it works asynchronously. So what I will do here is I will use the function run blocking that you should not use. But to bridge the gap, we have a function run blocking that is perfect for this scenario. Now the problem here is we should not use run blocking because it may cause an ANR. So what the official documentation suggests is whenever we come into this kind of situation, we can call this function when our fragment launches. So what I will do is I will go to the base fragment, and here I will use the life cycle scope. So here I will use the life cycle scope, and I will call this auth token. Now when we do this, the data store library automatically stores it in the main memory. So when next time I will call the auth token, it will quickly give me the result and it won't cause a ANR. Now we have our token, we have the API, and to the build API function, this time we will pass that token as well. Now finally I will return user repository and I will pass the API. That's it. So we have the repository, we have the fragment binding, we have the view model. Now I will override the function on view created, and here we can call the function that is get user. So I will use the view model and I will call get user function, and then finally we can observe the user. We will pass view lifecycle owner and the observer. Now here we will get the resource. So I will write when it is resource dot success. So when we have a success, we will update the UI. So I will write here update UI and I will pass it. Let's create a function. So this time we have login response. Actually, to this function we can directly pass the user, so we do not need to pass login response. So what we will do is we will pass the user instance here like this. Let's import the user and we will get the it.value.user here. So inside this function we can update the UI and we can display the user information. And I think I forget to tell you that I have already created this UI. So you can get the source code. The link is given in the description of this video. It is very simple UI, just a table layout and a button. So let's go back to our home fragment and we have updated the UI. We are getting an error inside our login fragment. Let's see where it is. So I already told you that we are making the access token nullable and it may cause an error. So just for now I am making it like this here, but we should not use this operator because it may cause a null pointer exception. I will fix it later in coming videos, but for now it's okay. So we have home fragment ready, we have the login fragment ready. Now before moving ahead, I would like to tell you one more thing that is requested by one of the viewers. His name is Shakil and he told or he requested that we should create one more state for loading. And to do this, I will go to the resource sealed class that we already created. And for the loading state, we will create an object here. So we have object loading and we will extend resource of type nothing here like this. So we have the loading state here. Now to define the loading state, what I will do is I will show you inside home view model. So here what I can do is I can put user dot value equals to resource dot loading like this. Now we have the loading state and we can get the state in our fragment. So what we will do is we will check if, actually it is when. So when it is resource dot loading, and in this case we can display a progress bar. So let's create a progress bar as well to make sure it is working. So we have the progress bar here and we can use this progress bar. So when we will create our home fragment, we will hide the progress bar. So we have binding dot progress bar dot visible and we will pass false to hide the progress bar, and we will do the same thing here when we have a success response, and when we have a loading state we will display the progress bar like this. So everything is fine and now we can run our application. So let's try running it and see it is working or not. Oops, our application is crashing. So let's see what is the issue in the log cat. And here you can see the view model class not found. So as we are using a factory for creating our view models and we just forget to create the new home view model. And to create the view model, we will go inside our view model factory. So where is the view model factory? So inside the base package, we have the view model factory. Now here, we need to create the new view model. So here right now we have only our auth view model and we need to define here the newly created view model, that is our home view model. So we will write here model class dot is assignable from, and we will check home view model class dot java, and we will create the home view model. We will pass repository as user repository and then as T. And everything is fine now. Let's try running the application again. And we see the progress bar and we have the values. And if you go to the logcat, you can see we called this API and we passed the bearer token. So our application is working absolutely fine. So that is all for this video, friends. I hope you found this video helpful and learned something new. In case you have any problem or confusion or question, you can leave that in the comment section below and I will try to help you out. So thanks for watching everyone. This is Bilal Khan now signing off.